Okay, hello everyone in the 5 continents and welcome to another edition of our international meetings. And this morning we have a great good friend from ours, Miss Dawn Wing. Dawn Wing. Hello, dear Dawn.
Hello, Jaime. I'm so grateful to be here.
And we are also very grateful and thankful with you. Let me share my screen as every Sunday, and let me tell you about what is going to happen today. Well, it takes a few seconds to start. It's frozen. So our community is the World Community of Educators. Today is July the 21st, and we have our 119th International English Online meeting. This is our YouTube channel where you can watch all the videos. And if you want to contact me, this is my Facebook account. And who are our next guest speakers? Well, let me show you. Just a few seconds, please. Well, let me see. In on August the 25th, we will have our good friend Debra Suarez. Then in September, Randall Davis from the USA. And then in October, Mark Dorr, also from the USA. In November, our good friend Eugenia Carrion Canton from Argentina. Then in November, Monica Rodriguez from Argentina. And finally, on December the 15th, Celeste Lemus from Guatemala. So who is our speaker today? Let's see. Sorry, something is wrong here. Let me see. So our international guest speaker today is the wonderful Dawn Wing, PhD. She's a writer and educator whose work explores the beauty and tensions of language, culture, and place. Her latest transdisciplinary work explores language through the lenses of wildness, beauty, and imagination. Well, she received her BA in International Relations, Spanish, and German at the University of California, Davis, MA in Crosscultural and Bilingual Leadership from California State University in Sacramento, Trainer of Trainers, TOT, certification from the School for International Training, SIT, and PhD in Transformative Studies at the California Institute of Integral Studies. What else can we say about our good friend? Wing's dissertation explored stories at the transdisciplinary intersections of language, ecolinguistics, and linguistic human rights. And Wing's novel, Midlark, from Horn Press, was awarded the Women Writing the West WAILLA Award for Historical Fiction Finalists, High Plains Book Award for Women Writer Finalists, and NMAZ Book Awards for Historical Fiction Finalists. And finally, her first book, Teaching Passionately, What's Love Got to Do with It? Co-writing with Joan Wynne, her mother, was published in 2004 by Pearson. Wynne has worked with language teachers around the world and presents regularly at international and national language and research conferences. Wynne is academic director of the Department of Teacher Education at Santa Fe Community College and lives with her family in Santa Fe. So thank you so much, dear Dawn. And the screen is all yours. And thank you for your time with us on a Sunday morning.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I want to thank everyone who is here for sharing this time. I'm absolutely delighted. Thank you so much, Jaime, for inviting me. And I wanted to also share, I picked flowers from our garden this morning to bring to our gathering. And so I wanted to make sure and share those. There was a hummingbird out there, a harbinger of beauty and joy. And before we dive into the presentation, I also just wanted to take a moment and just take some deep breaths. And I'd like to honor a couple of mentors of mine as we explore these ideas that I'm so thrilled to share with you and to explore together. And one of those is, of course, the incomparable Isabel Allende, the Chilean writer, who every time she sits down to write, she lights a candle to invite the spirits. And so I just wanted to light a candle for us for our gathering this morning, which I shall place right there. And Terry Tempest Williams, who, when she sits down to write, always has a bowl or a glass of water on her desk to remind her that transformation is occurring even when we can't see it. So even though we can't see the water evaporating, that transformation is occurring. And so I wanted to ground us in those ideas as we dive in. And I will go ahead now and share my screen.
Just let me
And
remind everyone that if the session is cut or is off, we'll be back using the same link, please.
thank you so much. Thank you, Jaime. Let me share this and start from hopefully. Oh, good. I can see you. I won't be, I can't while I'm presenting see the chat. I apologize. I like to try to go back and forth, but as soon as the end of the presentation, I'll dive in there so I can respond and we can continue our conversation. So these ideas, wildness, beauty, imagination, translanguaging, and transdisciplinary research in ELT. I'm so grateful to be able to be here. They're ideas that I have found and really believe enrich language acquisition, bring energy to language acquisition, and make relevancy and make it exciting. Again, I'm going to ground all of us. I know many of the people here, and I know we all have multiple responsibilities and pulls and tugs and ties. What I'm going to invite us all to do right now, including myself, is for this moment, this brief moment in time, to lift those up, take some deep breaths, and ground ourselves in this community and the ideas that we're sharing together. So during our time together, we're going to explore translanguaging, wildness, beauty, and imagination of language. We're going to look at transdisciplinary research, and then bringing it all together. And my hope and my intention for our time is you in your particular teaching work will we'll end our time together with ideas for what this means for you and your work. Translanguaging. Okay, when I heard about translanguaging, I fell in love. I fell in love with these ideas. It is the language, it is the life that we who speak multiple languages live. These particular ideas come from, of course, the incredible Jim Cummins. This is his 2019 book. And originally it came from a Welsh educational context, and it's the deliberate switching from one language to another. And so for many of us, and when I first learned about these ideas, it was actually at a TESOL conference, and it was David Schwartzer who was talking about this. And it lifts up for us to think about and examine when we think, okay, only one language. So especially like we're talking about the English language teaching context, many times the belief has been, okay, stay in English, only English in this classroom. And it really invites us, encourages us to rethink our thoughts around that as far as what is the most effective in language acquisition and what is the most fluid in life. And so he shares a story. So Cummins shares this story about, and he was at a conference in 2013. And again, talking about these ideas of, okay, stay only in one language in the classroom. So for us in this context, it would be English. And what he calls into question is these ideas of the two solitudes assumption. So we have English as if it is one tree, and then the mother tongue or whatever additional language is another tree, but those are separate. And so what Cummins invites us to look at, and then the incredible Ofelia Garcia, and anybody who's interested in translanguaging, Ofelia Garcia has contributed. I mean, her work is just incredible. And what she invites us, continues to invite us to consider is it's that our languages are all woven together. And as David Schwartzer mentioned, when I first heard him, he said, it's kind of like our different roles in life. So I'm a mother, a teacher, a writer, a wife, a daughter. I speak English, I speak Spanish, I speak German. And whatever context I'm in, those other things don't cease to exist. They're all a part of who I am. And it is that embracing of these various parts of us that actually enriches and creates a greater whole. So for example, here's an example of translanguaging. And for those who speak Spanish, this may sound familiar. The most important lección we have relearned during time is that of emergence, based on the Chilean biólogo Francisco Varela has called the looping thing, the connectedness of cells, of human being, of life. Rather than understand teaching and learning, and especially language learning, simply as boxes of inputs and outputs, we have focused on visualizing an emergent network as human language and school language. We have insisted on loopiness, on the network that cannot separate one part of life from another, one named language from another. What does translanguaging mean? And here, I was at an incredible translanguaging conference a month ago, just phenomenal. And this is Ofelia Garcia. So these are her ideas. I include this photo because I was completely fangirling over her. She was at this conference. She sat next to me in another session. I was utterly fangirling over her and her work. What does translanguaging mean? An approach to the use of language, bilingualism, and education of bilinguals, and I would say multilinguals, as would she, considers the language practice of multilinguals not as autonomous language systems, as has been traditionally the case, but as one linguistic repertoire that with features that have been societally constructed as belonging to two separate languages. Here is an additional definition of translanguaging, and this was sent to me by the incredible Tove Skutnov-Kangas. We'll be talking about her later. And when we were talking about translanguaging, she said, Dawn, you have to include this, and this is from Bonin and Unamuno. We open our discussion by reviewing the different definitions of translanguaging, and that is the fact that indigenous languages are often left out of this conversation. So we discussed the concept of translanguaging by showing how theoretically unhelpful it is to account for language dynamics among indigenous speakers leading revitalization projects in the southern cone of Latin America. And so often when we discuss translanguaging, what Tove highlights is indigenous languages and the continuation of mother tongues are left out. And so we need to make sure and include this. What is another? An explanatory concept, an instinct, which applies also to monolinguals. Descriptive, a label for the fluid use. And it is also, and this, really taps into a political pedagogical practice. So when we're in context of translanguaging, when we're out and about in the world, depending on which languages we're using, that whole idea of the political pedagogical practice really comes into view. For example, an example here in the United States and perhaps in in other countries is that idea of we're in the United States, speak English when we're out in public speaking Spanish. Scholarship includes Mazak, a language ideology that takes bilingualism as the norm, posits that bilinguals do not separate their languages into discrete systems. Again, I'm going to refer to the banyan tree, a set of practices that are still being researched and described, and transformational practice that continually invents and reinvents the world through languaging. So as you know, languages are living entities and continually change. What does it look like and sound like? So for example, here we go. Here's an example of translanguaging. Tia Carmen and Tío Ramon are speaking Spanish, trying to figure out the ingredients needed. They call to Juan and Tanya and Michelle in Spanish to take out some of the ingredients for food preparation. Juan asks Tia Carmen in Spanish what she needs from the refrigerator. Michelle calls out in English that she has found the beans, but asks which variety. Tío Ramon calls out in Spanish that he wants the red beans. Tanya uses a mixture of Spanish and English to ask Tia Carmen which condiments she wants. Tia, what else do you need? I have the salt, adobo, y ajo. ¿Necesitas el vinagre or just the oil? Their neighbor Russo walks in with a rotisserie chicken he has prepared for that evening, calling out greetings in Italian. Although no one in the house speaks Italian, they all called out excited greetings in either Spanish or English, knowing instinctively what Russo is saying. In this aspect, translanguaging takes the position that language is action and practice, not a discrete system or structures. And I love this. And this was shared with a presentation, Dr. Ron Moran, who we spoke together, gave presentations for a series hosted by KSALT, the Saudi Arabia, translanguaging, purposeful, playful, and private. So we have different contexts for translanguaging. There are times when it's very purposeful, social and academic. It can be interpersonal in the home. It can be academic when we do it, especially in classrooms, when we translanguage intentionally, depending on what the content and the context. It can be playful. And a lot of us, we just choose whichever, when we're with people who speak whatever languages we're speaking, we choose whatever best conveys that meaning in that instance. And it can be private. And so again, mother tongue languages are the languages of intimacy. And here's another, this is by Kathleen Hugh, and she gives there's a resource for you. She gives a wonderful talk about translanguaging in education. And it's that idea that it's horizontal, cooperative, fluid, allowed, as opposed to what has traditionally been the hierarchy of languages. And so only certain languages are allowed in certain classrooms. Horizontal translanguaging was the focus on the informal. And oftentimes vertical, it has been the focus on the formal and this focus on a more traditional language acquisition. And it's the idea of bringing these together. As I said, I live in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I have approximately 5 million photos of sunrises and sunsets because I love them. So you will see many. This was a sunrise as I was on a run one morning. Translanguaging really honors teachers as knowledge generators in multilingual contexts, linguistic and political influences. This is a wonderful book by colleague Tatiana Klein, who also works with Ofelia Garcia. Translanguaging is the use of language as a dynamic repertoire and not as a system with socially and politically defined boundaries that centers on the unbounded language practices of multilinguals. And this is a wonderful book that I just, it was at that Translanguaging conference, became aware of a wonderful presentation by Dr. Minea Armijo Romero, Translanguaging recognizes that language use is fluid and dynamic, and that individuals use their full linguistic repertoire effectively. So what I'd like to do is invite you to think about what implications might this have for you and your ELT students. And I can't see the screen. I can't see the screen to see if someone is putting something in the screen or in the chat. I'm going to invite, if you care to unmute and to share what implications this might have for you and your ELT students, I invite you to do so now.
So anyone who wants to say something, please, you are free to do it.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for your beautiful pictures. I appreciate it. I actually I wanted to ask you how you would maybe, I mean, I won't ask a practical question, but yeah, anyway, like what about psychologically preparing students for this? Because it seems like that students, they do feel the urge to use their first language. However, they feel like if they do, they might not be prepared to deal with, interactions in the real world because of the pressure. So I wonder what you think about this.
No, you lift up the primary, I mean, that's a factor, I believe, that we all wrestle with. And it is by exactly what you just kind of named. And what I will name again is there are structured ways of doing this. And which I can, there are multiple texts that really
Please.
talk about this, and I share with you. I'm glad to share more, because that's not the total focus of this presentation. There are things like preview and review. It's basically, having a very honest, open, explicit conversation about this and letting them know it's okay. And this is why we do it, because it supports our language acquisition, and it's the way we live. And so there are very structured ways of doing this, which I'm more than happy to share with you and to share some more resources, because that is the crux of it. Madeline L'Engle talks about the necessity of structure for freedom. And I am the biggest believer in that. And you set the structure in your classroom for students to have the freedom to translanguage within.
Thank you.
You bet, yeah.
Anyone else has a comment or a question to make? Yeah, Ivan, go on.
I have one question. Don, I love this idea of honoring languages in the classroom and guessing the skills, the conditions needed for the teacher and the school to promote the translanguages. And my question is related to assessment. I don't know if in your presentation you will talk about this, but I'm just thinking about how assessment can be changed, right? In a context where translanguages is the norm.
Oh gosh, Ivan, I don't go into assessment in this particular presentation. You and I can connect, or I can talk about that. Assessment, because we all know how important assessment is absolutely a part of a classroom where translanguaging occurs. And again, it's with the teacher expertise on what you are assessing, what the intention of, it really depends on what the assessment is going to be and it can be things like, say you're assessing something in English, whatever that may be. One example of what translanguaging and how it supports that assessment English is allow students to speak in Spanish or to speak in whatever their mother tongue, to make meaning as they're preparing for that assessment. And then they can go into assessment, and perhaps the entire assessment is in English. But as they're preparing for it, they know they're allowed to make meaning. Pues yo no entiendo aquí lo que necesito hacer. as they prepare for it. So that's an example of how it's used in a structured way to support language acquisition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you. It's a tool.
Yeah. It's a tool, absolutely. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah.
Okay, anyone else has a question or a comment to make? Okay, I guess you may go on, dear Dawn.
And these ideas of and I'm so thankful. Thank you for questions. And I can see my chat now. So anyway, so hopefully I'll be able to, yes, connect there
Here
as
there is a
well.
question, dear Dawn.
Yes, if you could read it to me.
Yeah, Isa Berregui. Well, sorry, it's on off.
Mhm.
He or she says, Isa, I'm working on decentering ELT. Translanguaging is at the heart of my research. Could you
Beautiful.
please give us some ideas how can translanguaging helps in this process?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and these ideas, and in fact, Paul, who is with us, and for those of you who were connected on Facebook and LinkedIn, hosted a panel of decolonize and multilingual education, and really spoke to many of these ideas. And so, at the heart of it, I would say, and I would love to connect. My email will be coming. We can continue this conversation. Is an honoring of the other languages. And so how translanguaging helps in this process, because the whole there's the honoring of the additional languages. Traditionally in English language teaching, there has been a hierarchy with English at the pinnacle, and then other so-called world languages, Spanish, French, but in this perceived hierarchy, misinformed hierarchy, but the other languages were not were not involved, were not honored, especially indigenous languages were not. So it is through translanguaging, through allowing the use of whatever language a language learner is coming into the classroom, that does decentralize it. And so I hope this helps. There is so much research out there around this. I encourage us to all connect. And Marlon, thank you so much for continuing. What a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. I hope that helps.
Yeah, so a complete answer. Thanks a lot, dear Marlon.
Thank you. So diving into continuing to decentralize and to decolonize multilingual education and ELT, these ideas of wildness, beauty, and imagination language. And so in my experience, frequently, language teaching and acquisition has been really focused on form, which is incredibly important. So it doesn't take away. This is a yes and. These are some ideas to play with in your language classroom, and as multilingual people. Wildness connotes deep connection and freedom. Terry Tempest Williams. And as soon as we're going to have to leave here in 10 minutes. We're going to hop off. We're going to hop right back on again in the same link. Wildness of language. Wildness connotes deep connection and freedom. Terry Tempest Williams expresses wildness when fear is replaced by awe. We all know the biggest inhibitor to language acquisition is fear. We all know that. And so when we can create conditions, when we can create language acquisition conditions in our classroom, where there is an awe, where there is a freedom to learn and to make mistakes, and that fear is replaced, that is when language acquisition occurs. We recognize wildness as creativity in the extreme. Wildness is creativity. So again, as I just said, it occurs effectively within a sense of engagement, lack of self-awareness, and flow. So I encourage all of us to think, how can we create this wildness of language in a language acquisition classroom? Beauty of language. This interpretation, this understanding of beauty is through an indigenous perspective, primarily through the Dene perspective, which is the Navajo here in the Southwest. And it is a very holistic understanding of beauty as expressed as ho-ho, meaning to live in peace, balance, beauty, and harmony. Beauty of language expands exponentially. The beauty of the language itself, the beauty of worlds open through language, through acquisition of new languages, the beauty of connection and relationship of and through language, beauty of culture, history, and family. Again, yes, there's form. Yes, there's grammar. Yes, there's the conjugation. Yes, there's past, present, imperfect. However, and why does all of that matter? To live in the beauty of that language, to experience the beauty of that language, to experience the culture, the history. And here is incredible poet laureate Lucy Tapahonso, Dene. Sa'ad is the Dene word for the language which is given to us by the holy ones, contains the wisdom of stories, history, songs, prayers, and teachings that were meant to guide us into the future. So thinking about this in the midst of a language classroom, it is adaptable and relevant to our changing lifestyles. The holy ones knew we would be blessed and sometimes threatened. Sa'ad is also portable because it lies in our way of life, our approach to challenges, and in our attitudes about the land, water, animals, plants, and environments. I was very blessed. Lucy was on my PhD. She was on my committee. Imagination of language. The imagination presents us with the possible. So we have these ideas. The imagination is where the ideas begin, but then it takes us to put them into action. And that is what I love about this idea is we're not just talking about the abstract. So, we're talking about the praxis of it. We're talking about the theory and the praxis and bringing it together. The possible potential realities that it is our job to actualize. It also presents us with a world that would not be complete without our help. And this is where we as educators, this is where our role to create the potential of worlds for our students, for other language lovers that would not be possible without our help. Imagination creates potential, encourages action and energy, creates new realities. And this is where, in this fabulous book, 1934, Dorothea Brande, she talks about the advantages of duplicity. In short, oh gosh, you can tell I added this at 4 a.m. In short, you will have to learn to be your own best friend and severest critic, mature, indulgent, stern, and yielding by turns. So this idea of wildness, beauty, imagination in the language learning classroom, it is fluid, it is very intuitive, and there's a time and a place for it. It is not saying all and only, and then the grammar and what we've traditionally done in the language classroom doesn't exist. It's a yes and. We have our wildness, creativity, imaginative hats on in the classroom, where students feel free, they make mistakes, they learn, they experience, and yes, we also need to learn the grammar. And yes, we also need to learn those rules. And yes, they also need to learn those rules. So it's a yes and. What does not encourage language acquisition is a fearful classroom, is a classroom where students are so worried about making mistakes that they're scared to try. And so it's the advantage of duplicity. And again, this was written in 1934. My entire book is outlined because it has as much to do with teaching as it does as writing. So as you reflect on wildness, beauty, and imagination of language, how might you weave these elements into your teaching in your life? And I see we have 4 minutes in this link. What I'm going to invite us all to do is please feel free to share, unmute, and share or include in the chat. We'll spend 2 more minutes here. Thank you so much, Marlon. We'll spend 2 more minutes here. Then we'll hop out and we'll come right back in and finish. So anybody have any thoughts they'd like to share? Feel just unmute, popcorn style.
Any thoughts to share, please? Go on,
Well,
Fernanda.
I really appreciate your initiative in bringing translanguaging from this perspective. And I think that in some contexts, this might be harder than others. I don't know how things are over there in the US. And you know, just in common in just mainstream schools, I think that it needs to be slowly implemented, but without an implementation mindset, like I think that it's about creativity, it's about intuition. So it's not so much about a program that we're trying to implement, but perhaps only bringing out or finding out, you know, the real beauty of language, which I totally I could understand from your presentation. So thank you. But it's definitely you know, an interesting thing. I wonder what the other people, you know, what they have to say.
Thank you,
Like,
Fernanda.
anyone else?
Remember that if the session is off, please go back using the
Oh,
same link.
yeah.
And that is touching base on that whole socio-political that we talked about at the beginning, because it's very real and it's very, so I'm so appreciative of you for lifting this. And in my experience, it's true everywhere around the world because of this perceived hierarchy of languages. And so thank you. Yeah, we all wrestle with that and navigate that.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so
Mhm.
much.
What I'm going to invite us all to do right now, because we're about ready to get cut off, is we'll just hop out and we'll hop out very briefly. We'll
Yeah,
jump right
immediately,
back
very
into
briefly.
we'll literally jump right back into the same link and we'll continue right on from here.
Can I
Okay.
ask a question? My question now?
Please
Or
do, Ivan.
Yeah,
Go
yes,
on.
go for it. Yes.
okay. So I think it's one of the fears in the classroom is word translation. So my question is, what would be the difference between translanguaging and translation in the classroom? Like putting into practice.
Translanguaging is a fluid coming together of two different languages. You're not translating. You're expressing ideas in two different languages, but there's a single that you're expressing those ideas. The idea is not as much, although, you know, I hear what you're saying, because when we talk, let's jump right back into that because we're about ready to get cut off. And then let's jump right back into it. Be right back.
Yeah, please be right back.
Okay, great.
Okay, we are back. Thank you. And I'm so sorry for this problem today. It won't happen in the next session. I promise. Well, we are waiting for, okay, there she is. Hello, dear Dawn.
Hello, here we are again. Okay, I will jump back in, but let me, Ivan, that's, you know, because I completely hear what you're saying about that. In my understanding, like translation, we're literally taking one idea from one language and translating it into another language. Translanguaging, the whole idea is meaning, and the whole idea is ideas expressed through different languages. And so it's por ejemplo, vamos a ir a la cocina to eat. And so we're not going to, like, I'm not translating or interpreting one idea into another. It's a fluid conveyance that where we weave together both languages. And the focus is on meaning rather than translation.
So just let me think. Let me ask this question. So is something like you do it without thinking about it, just unconsciously happens?
Completely. I mean, I think sometimes we think about it, but it's very intuitive. it's very, you just kind of tend to automatically do it with people who speak both or 3 or 4, however you speak. With it, your brain and your heart, you just kind of automatically choose whichever language is going to be, that idea is going to be best expressed in.
Okay, I guess.
May I add something in relation to translation? So translation is actually nowadays it is seen as a technical thing, but back in the days it was seen as an art as well. So it's also interesting if we question what we understand by translation, because translation is actually like, it's not just about the forms, it's about seeing what's behind the forms and the symbols. So I think that's what Don is talking about, is about the symbols behind the language itself. You understand that each language has unique symbols, and those symbols are you use different words and the language to express yourself. Yeah. So like they're, words.
I love that, because translating is an art. And interpreting, yeah, it is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead. Okay, we'll dive back in. And let's see here.
Thank you so much, dear Don, for your patience.
Oh, no, absolutely. I think one of the things we have all learned in the last few years is we just roll with it with technology things. we just go with it. Now I'm trying to think, okay, we're going to play from current slide. I'm gonna not skip, but go through transdisciplinary research, because I want to make sure we have time at the end to bring everything together for everyone to make meaning for themselves. This again so this idea of transdisciplinary research is something that was new to me. I didn't know there was a word for it. It was, I figured out, oh my gosh, this is how I live my life. I just didn't know there was a word for it. Transdisciplinary research is research that integrates knowledge across academic disciplines and with non-academic stakeholders to address societal changes. It is guided by the principle that scientific rigor meets societal relevance, which for me, isn't that why we teach? And isn't that exactly why we teach? It is a shift from what has traditionally been very siloed in academia. The different disciplines have been siloed, the different languages and language classes have been siloed. True disciplinarity is demanding. It requires creativity and often courage. And I think, everything we're talking about right now about societally, how it's looked at, but today it is a key requirement for the future of science. One question that comes up that I wanted to address is, what's the difference between interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity? So interdisciplinarity synthesizes and harmonizes links between disciplines coordinated into a coherent whole. I got an image we're going to look at right now. Transdisciplinarity integrates the natural and social and health sciences. So interdisciplinary is primarily in academia, and it stays within its disciplines. Transdisciplinarity, like Paulo Freire, with transformative education, you go out into the world. It does not stay within the classroom. Such is the same with transdisciplinarity. And so for example, interdisciplinarity, say this is math, science, social studies. Yes, they work together, but they remain distinct. Transdisciplinarity, these are woven from recycled sari cloth. You can't tell where one ends and another begins. And it comes from the world. It draws in the world it does not stay siloed within academia. So I very much myself am a transdisciplinarian. Like I say, I didn't know there was a word. I just thought there was something wrong with me. Honestly, like, why do I not interpret? I just don't. Academia is in the ways that many other, in my experience, academics do. I wrote a piece about this for any of you who also may be transdisciplinarians, because I came to this later in life. This link right here, it will take you directly to, I write a blog, Dewdrops, and I write here about a transcendent, transdisciplinary creative life, because for most of my adult life, I have my academic world, and I felt like I could only talk about my academic world like in academia. I have my teaching life, I have my writing life, I have my ranching life, and I felt like I had to, that those things had to remain separate. It was crazy making. What I finally decided to do is to start weaving all of those together. And so when I'm teaching, I talk about the ranch, or I talk about writing. When I'm presenting, I talk about ranching. And so I wrote this piece, which I share with you because it was my embracing of the way my spirit lives. I just didn't know it was allowed in academia or in the classroom. So transdisciplinarity, the unprecedented global linguistic and environmental crises do require us to move beyond discipline-specific and isolated analyses and into a richer and deeper perspective, as only a thoroughly transdisciplinary perspective can navigate such issues, which are at once technological, cultural, ethical, political, economic, and ecological. And this is so relevant for us in our classrooms and us in our language classrooms, because this is the world that we live in. This is the world that our students live in. This is what is real and meaningful. And so the days of focusing only on language and not bringing the world, again, Paulo Freire, reading the word, reading the world, transdisciplinarity provides a structure for us to do this. Here's my transdisciplinary life. I'm very aware of our time. And so I am going to kind of skip through. I want to highlight a couple of different things, and then I want time for questions at the end. So this is videotaped. Also, if you would like this presentation, just pop me a note and I will be happy to send it to you. This is the bringing together of my academic world. I am a writer, landscape literature, holistic resource management, regenerative, it's regenerative agriculture from our ranch. And my transdisciplinary research brought all of this together with the focus of how to integrate language as an intrinsic element of landscape through the lenses of wildness, beauty, and imagination. And so I am now going to jump ahead. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, so I can jump ahead, because I really want to make sure we look at what this means for you. And we're going to touch base on, we're going to go to our dear Tove Skutnov-Kangas. And let me share my screen again. And bring in liliology, because that is such a focus of transdisciplinary research. Let me start from right here. So again, and many of you will know this may be new for many of you, the idea of mother tongue languages and the influence in the classroom, and the stronger the mother tongue language, the stronger additional languages are learned. Tove Skutnov-Kangas, there she was. I had the gift of spending time with she and her husband, Robert, shortly before her very premature death a year ago. I was able to spend time with them in Sweden, but I needed to understand what this looked like. And the idea is, the stronger the mother tongue language, the stronger each additional language. So it's why we allow mother tongue languages in our classroom, because just like the water lily, the strength, the root of the primary language provides the strength for all additional languages. When there is interrupted development of the mother tongue is when it's like cutting the strength of all of the additional languages to come. So I fell in love with water lilies 30 years ago with Tove's work. And then there's dear Tove. She knitted these socks for me. This was at a TESOL, I think it was 2006, maybe. They were my author socks the first time that I wrote. And then when each of my kids were born, she knitted socks for them. Liliology. This is bringing the natural world into academia. I needed to understand what it meant. So I just grabbed, and when we're talking transdisciplinary research, I literally just grabbed my paints and I needed to understand, what is this looking at? And this is looking at previously academia was a brick wall. This is how I often think of ELT classrooms where other languages are not invited in. There's a brick wall to the learning. This merits about an hour talking about, but what I want to focus on, flowers, the petals of the flowers, and this was by Dr. Narita Blair, represents different stories. Think of the flowers of different stories from our students that we bring into the classroom. There's Dr. Blair. She came to Santa Fe and I had time to spend time with her. I wanted to share, this is a project that will look familiar to Yvonne and to Mary and to Kim and to Gabriela and those who are here from Panama, talking about transdisciplinary. Right now, we're working with creating standards and curriculum in Panama. I needed to visually understand, what does this mean? So again, I went and I grabbed my paints and I started painting. The standards are the roots of the tree. Which influence everything. They're the structure of the tree. And then we go into the domain. This is how we're creating curriculum. The personal, transactional, educational, the scenario, real life context goes to the theme. Then we go to the language skills, and each unit is one of these branches. So each unit has now writing, listening, speaking, mediation. The learning outcomes are what is visible. I share this primarily just because in the idea of, whoops, did I share my screen? Can you still see? Yeah. What is going to create meaning for you and your students? This is how we spend every Saturday. This is what I'm looking at right now. I wanted to share. This is my view right now. I wanted to share with you. So I'm very cognizant of time. What I want to do is, I'm glad to share this with you, but primarily what I want to do is encourage you to think about, what does this mean for you? The wildness, beauty, and imagination of English language teaching, translanguaging, transdisciplinary research. This green is open because that's you, for you to write and for you to paint on, and what this means for you in your classroom. So that is my that's my email, and that is my blog. And so I invite you, I would love to continue our conversation. I really, really want to make sure that we have time for conversation and questions. And I'm very aware of our time. So
yeah, no, thank you so much. So unmute your microphones. If anybody wants to make a question or a comment, please, hello, dear Maya.
Maya, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you so much for being here. Yay.
Unmute your microphone,
You're still muted.
Maya.
You're still muted.
I just got out of another class. Sorry, I'm a little late. Anyway, I didn't want to miss it because I know it's wonderful. My biggest question, I'm fascinated. This is so inspiring. And I love that liliology. I love it. I love it.
Yes. I can send you more things because it deserves far more than we had time for.
Absolutely.
I'd love to share her ideas. Yes.
Please tell me exactly what you mean by translanguaging. I'm fascinated by that word, but I really would like to understand what it really means.
Yeah, and so I think there are multiple definitions. I'm going to share right now from and this is from Minea Armijo Romero in her Cultivating the Pedagogy of Translanguaging. She defines it as, of course, now translanguaging recognizes that language use is fluid and dynamic, and that individuals use their full linguistic repertoire to communicate effectively. So it is for we bring our full, to me, what if there's something to take away, that each student, each person, we bring our full linguistic repertoire to whatever the context. So because I'm speaking English right now, doesn't mean my brain is still thinking sometimes in Spanish. My brain is none of that stops because of whichever language I'm speaking. And so translanguaging allows and welcomes and structures bringing your full linguistic repertoire into the classroom or anywhere. We used to call it one code switching, which is derogative, and which language teachers would not allow in the classroom. We now know that that is basically inhibiting language acquisition. We want students to bring their full linguistic selves, linguistic landscapes, and repertoire into the classroom.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Now, through translanguaging, when we see, for example, when we hear a student speaking, the English learners, and we see that they're using, let's see, the Spanish structure instead of the English structure. Would translanguaging manifest itself in this way? Is that the idea? And is that something that we need to work on and have them, okay, if you're speaking in English, although you have the background of your native language that is Spanish, but we need to learn the structures, the grammatical structures.
You know what we do is we do exactly what you just said. Yes, that is the way that that is the grammatical structure in Spanish. Now in English, this is the grammatical structure. You name it. You name it. As a, traditionally, frequently in language classrooms, it was, that's wrong. That's not wrong. That's not, they're bringing their full linguistic repertoire. They're making meaning for themselves and using what they know to make meaning. So how do we support that? Yeah, that is the way we do it in Spanish. Okay, now, how do we do this in English? And then students bring their knowledge, they bring their knowledge they know in one language to enhance another language. It doesn't, not to the detriment of it, it's to enhance their language learning. It turns a lot of our ideas on its head, a lot of our language learning ideas. I won't say it does kind of. It enriches the advances that we've made in language acquisition and knowing how the brains work even the last 10 years are phenomenal. And this is yes, and bringing this knowledge into that.
Awesome. Now, would before be considered as interfering with, calling it interference instead of integrating?
Before, what do you mean?
Now you mentioned that before we called it a code, what is it?
Code switching, right.
Now, when we're analyzing, for example, not only grammatical, but also pronunciation, whatever, and we can hear their native language in it, that we could consider it as interference of the native language. Is that how do you make peace? How do you make a piece of translanguaging and interference?
Well, I think we all are influenced by whatever our mother tongues are. I mean, my Spanish definitely has, the mother tongue influence of my mother tongue language of English. However, the idea of translanguaging is that's okay. That's okay. And we grow from it and we acknowledge it. And then, okay, so if we say like, okay, the R, okay, yeah, we do that in Spanish. Now let's practice in English, at least in American English, not British English, but, we would say And so it's a yes and not an interference. It's okay, this is our linguistic repertoire. Name it and then talk about, okay, now let's practice in English. Yeah, that's good in Spanish, but let's do this in English. And so it's an embracing of that rather than no, that's wrong, stay in English.
Okay, we
Okay.
got some other people here. Thank you so much, dear Maya. Franklin, Gabriela, Angela, Marlon, Juan, Zulema, Patricia, Flamen, Anthony, Michael, Marco Aparicio in Mexico, Martha Ogoño in Ecuador, Kim, anybody else who wants to, Ivan, Roxana in Peru, Fernanda, Raj, who wants to make a comment, please, or make a question?
Yes. Have you ever taught in this way, like, or do you research only, or have you, have you taught any groups?
I work with teachers. Well, when I was teaching, when I was in the elementary classroom, I did it. I didn't know what it was called and I didn't know what I was doing. And I frankly probably felt bad because I didn't think I was supposed to be doing it. I didn't have the language for it. I didn't know. Now I work with teachers and I teach teachers through structured ways, through theory, through practice on these methods. And so right now I work with teachers.
Okay,
Where?
could you share the references that you were talking about? Please.
Sure. Right now, well, gosh, there's so many translanguaging books. Here's one, Cultivating the Pedagogy of Translanguaging for K-12,
Yeah,
Transformative.
the one that will give some structure on how to implement.
Sure.
You
Okay.
spoke about preview and review.
Yeah, there's Biliteracy from the Start. And this is Kathy Escamilla.
Okay.
I also want to share, and this is by my dear friends and colleagues, Sandra Mercuri and Vivian Prats. This is Biliteracy para Todos.
Okay.
It lays it out exactly how to do it, early biliteracy. Here's another one, again, my colleague and dear friend, Sandra Mercuri and Sandra Musanti, la enseñanza en la aula bilingüe. These give very structured methods.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So let me ask you, dear Dawn, on behalf of all the audience, I'm
Yeah.
sure we need another session with you when you you present a practical class of how you would do it,
Sure.
how would you implement it. Let me ask you for that big favor, dear Dawn. Okay, anyone else, please? Thank you so much for the questions and the comments. Anyone else, please? Yeah, Marco Aparicio in Mexico, go on. Hello, Marco.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Well, thank you for this interesting presentation. I think this information that is being provided today is important at all different levels in different areas of language teaching. I'm from Mexico. I work at the university professionalizing language teachers, right? And what I want to comment is I think this definitely has to do with the concept of translanguaging, right? And probably, well, Don, you can tell me if I am right or not later. Probably I think this is one important factor why understanding about this topic is very important for language teachers and professionals preparing language teachers, right? For example, in this program, which is the level of a BA program, we prepare professionals for teaching English. The program now is a 4-year program, And in this program, this program is divided into two different levels, what we call a basic level and then a formative level, right? The basic level we consider is the first year of the program, right? And the other 3 years is belong to the formative level. One of the decisions that we have made for many years for the basic level is that we teach courses in Spanish, and then in the formative level, we teach courses in English because the students need the practice of English just because because English will be a very important tool for as professionals. But I still think many teachers in the program do not understand this issue very well. And when they teach courses in the first year of the program, courses that have to be taught in Spanish, they want to teach the class in English. Especially courses of language teaching methodology and that have to do with language teaching methodology and courses that have to do with linguistics, right? They say they have to teach, the course has to be taught in English because they will be English teachers, because the class is about English, because the class is about teaching English, right? But and also, even if they are not teaching these courses, they criticize teachers who teach these classes in Spanish, right? So the issue of translanguaging has to do not only with recognizing the importance of each language for each person, but it also has to do with the importance the languages have, for example, in this context, for enabling the students understand everything they have to learn, not only because we have to demonstrate that we speak English very well, right?
What I'm hearing, yes. And first, which university? Where are you?
Puebla.
Puebla. Yo estuve ahí en Puebla. Sí. Okay, so the focus would be, and why is from my immersion understandings of your program, it would be important for them to learn those, to get that initial coursework in Spanish, because the focus is on the content. And you want to make sure they really understand the content of the pedagogy. Then, yes, because they're going to be English teachers, then the natural segue would be to teach those courses in English. However, throughout, you can still use translanguaging in those classrooms to focus on meaning. But what I'm hearing, and why it would be important for them to get that in those initial concepts in Spanish, because these are primary language Spanish speakers, and they need to understand the concepts, and they need the pedagogy. And then you add the language acquisition onto that.
Right. And also, I consider that many times using Spanish is necessary even in the formative language. Well, I know that the practice of English for students is very important, but at this in the program, because they have to become professionals for teaching the language, it is not only necessary that they speak English at an appropriate level, but also that they do understand how to teach English, the methodology,
Exactly.
a lot of different issues about language and using languages, etc.
Thank you, dear Marco, in Mexico. Now, as you saw on the screen, we just got 9 more minutes. So let's express our gratitude and points of view very briefly to our guest who kindly has accepted to present another session on this wonderful and very academic topic. Dear Don, let me ask you, will you present another session with something more practical so we can implement in our classes?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So who wants to start saying, expressing our gratitude to our guest speaker today, Don Wing? Anybody wants to start? Thank you, dear Raj, maybe the president of our community.
Yeah, as I said, the topic has been very important, and I hope everybody should learn more about this. Thank you.
Yes, and please be with us more often, dear Marco. We miss you when you are absent.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Marco, are you going to go to Mestizo convention?
No, I was not there. No.
No, are you going this year?
Oh, I don't know yet. It's probably not.
I'll be there. I'll be there. I hope I can meet you.
I hope I will be there, right?
Okay, dear Raj.
Don, you're going to be there? Don, you're going to be there? Yeah,
not this year that I know of. I would love to be there. I love Mestizo. I've been in the past. We'll see if something happens.
Okay, dear Raj.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Dawn, thank you for this conversation presentation. What I'm remembering is how when I was educated in a convent, English was the only language we could speak. No mother tongue language was to be used. And then when I was working with Mary Scholl in Costa Rica, when we were learning nonviolent communication, and the participants would practice in Spanish and then present in English. And that was absolutely okay with me because I knew they were more fluent in their own language in Spanish and with feelings and needs than they were in English. And it flowed beautifully when they put the two together and made the presentation. So it just is so wonderful to see that it's important for integration instead of separation.
Good point, dear Raj. That's why she's the president of our community. Thank you so much, dear Raj. Anyone else, please, briefly, because we just have 4 or 5 more minutes. Please, Ophelia from Mexico.
Hi, Jaime. Good morning. Hi, everyone. I am very happy.
Ophelia, thank you so much for coming. Thank you. It's so wonderful to see you.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm currently working. I am having a class, but I didn't want to leave without acknowledging. Yes, I am in my break, and I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you. We are learning so much. Thank you to this wonderful community. To all the beautiful faces that I can remember from our previous session, Fer, Ivan, all of you. And Raj, I will see you at Mestizo. Great that you are coming. I'm very happy because of that. Okay, so thank you, Jaime. I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, dear Ophelia. Thank you.
We are learning a lot.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Have a great rest of your class, too.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Please, in Peru, in Ecuador, in Bolivia, in Costa Rica, in any other part of the world, please. Yeah, Ivan.
Thank you so much. Hey, Don, thank you so much for the presentation, bringing this topic and ideas and resources. And I want to leave with gratitude and inspiration. And also, I have one question in my mind. I'm going to just put it there. While I was translating the term translanguages in the document you were talking about, the project in Panama, I didn't want to use translenguaje or translingual because it brings the word of translation, right? So I used the word, I think it was dynamic, uso integrado de lenguas. So my question is, do you have any other term, synonym, or phrase that, you know, like we can use for translanguaging, but that's translinguaje, because it's like when people read translinguaje, oh, it's translation. So thank you.
Interesting, because what I've heard is translenguaje. And so that's I'm glad, that's interesting. And that's what they hear. And I didn't know that because I'm so, like, to me, oh gosh, I almost knocked over my flowers. I got to get my flowers back here for you guys. Because translanguaging has been such a passion of mine. So my brain goes to translanguaging. Not that I know of it. Let me ask around. Let me see if people, let me see if I can find other words that are used in Spanish that I'm not familiar with.
Integración de idiomas. Integración de lenguas.
Okay, on your next presentation, dear Dawn, I'm sure you
I got lots of notes I have to take now.
We just got 3 more minutes. I want to express on behalf of everyone, sorry, we have no more time, to express our deepest gratitude to this very academic, very profound, very deep, very enlightening. All the adjectives, we have learned so much. And now we know that we know nothing about, and we need to learn much more about this very interesting topic. Now I understand why when we talk or when we write in WhatsApp, you use English and then Spanish, and then I say, what's going on here? Now you said, yo estuve ahí, and it was so natural, and it happens to us. So it's beautiful to learn from you. It's been a great, beautiful experience and an honor to have you in our International English Online webinars. Please, a few seconds for you, dear Dawn, to say goodbye to everyone. And now we admire you much more than before. Thank you so much, because we know that you are a very professional and a very good human being. Thank you so much, dear Dawn.
Oh, thank you. No, I gotta do. I just, first of all, I've got to get some hearts up there too. Thank you for including me and inviting me. Thank you ever so much to each person here who is here on a Sunday morning or evening or afternoon. I'm not sure what time it is in the Philippines. And so I just wanted to say, I am deeply grateful, and I'm passionate about these ideas. I love these ideas so much, and I'm grateful to share them. And I'm very grateful. I'm so grateful to be a part of this community. So thank you so much for including me. Yeah.
So definitely we'll have you with us on a next session. Let's talk about it. And I'm sure that you will go to Mex TESOL next year, but also to Peru TESOL and everywhere TESOL. Everywhere.
Okay, I would love to.
Because people need to know about this, need to learn about this, and be aware of what we are doing right or wrong. So thank you once more, dear Dawn, and thanks everyone. And thanks Raj, Maya, Ivan, Martha, Franklin, Zulema, Roxy, Marco, Juan, Patricia, Anthony in the USA, Maria Campos, Marlon, Lime, Eva, iPhone 3, Sandra Cárdenas, Berry, Isa, Angela Romay, Lupita Siqueiros, Graciela Farinanjo, and Gabriela Galvez. See you everywhere. See you in August with Debra Suarez. In August, I don't remember, on August 20 something, but see you in a month. Goodbye, take care.
Abrazos, hugs, abrazos.
Abrazos, hugs.
Yes.
How do you say abrazos in French or Italian or
in the Philippines?
Or in
Marlon,
the Philippines?
How do you say hugs?
How do you say hugs, Anthony, Michael? Well, take care, and I have to cook and do the washing now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, dear Dawn.
Thank you so much.
And we'll keep in touch. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.